Princess Liara of Vexthani stood at the massive viewport of the orbital station, watching ships from across the galaxy arrive for what would determine her fate. The Zephyrian princess was 22 standard years old, with a characteristic silver skin and luminescent blue markings that traced elegant patterns across her face and arms. Her father, Emperor Kethvar, had called this gathering to find her a suitable husband among the royal families of the Galactic Federation. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, built specifically for this occasion. Crystalline spires stretched in all directions, each designed to accommodate different atmospheric requirements for the various species that would attend. The central hub where Liara now stood was kept at standard atmospheric conditions, suitable for most carbon-based life forms. Nervous, daughter? Emperor Kethvar approached, his own markings dimmed with concern. The Zephyrian royal family ruled over 12 star systems and commanded respect throughout the Federation. This marriage alliance would strengthen their position significantly. Not nervous, father. Curious. Liara's voice carried the melodic quality of her people. I wonder which prince will find our alliance worth pursuing. The Emperor's advisor, Minister Thalquan, materialized beside them with a subtle shimmer that indicated his use of personal teleportation technology. Your Majesty, the first delegations are requesting permission to dock. Through the viewport, Liara could see the approaching vessels. The sleek, predatory lines of a Krillian dreadnought caught her attention first. Prince Vashtor would be aboard, she knew. The Krillians controlled the largest military fleet in the Eastern Spiral Arm. Their prince was known for his tactical brilliance and his complete lack of interest in anything that couldn't be conquered or destroyed. Behind the Krillian ship came the organic curves of a Simbari vessel, its living hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Prince Ziloth of the Simbari Collective would bring with him the promise of advanced biotechnology and a hive mind consciousness that could solve problems no individual could comprehend. The thought of joining such a collective both fascinated and terrified Liara. The third major vessel to arrive was the geometric perfection of a machinate constructor. Prince Algorithm 779 did not technically have a biological form, existing instead as a distributed consciousness across multiple android bodies. The machinates offered technological advancement beyond imagination, but at the cost of gradually replacing all organic components with mechanical ones. Each of them brings something valuable, Emperor Kethvar observed, following his daughter's gaze. The Krillians offer military protection. The Simbari bring biological mastery. The machinates promise technological transcendence. And what do I bring them? Liara asked, though she knew the answer. You bring them us, daughter. The Zephyrian Empire controls the most stable hyperspace routes in this sector. Our navigation technology is unmatched, and our diplomatic corps has prevented more wars than any military force could win. More ships continued to arrive. The crystalline vessels of the Resonance Harmony floated in perfect formation, their prince able to manipulate gravitational fields with thought alone. The dark, angular ships of the Shadow Dominion seemed to absorb light itself, their prince capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Each delegation represented billions of citizens, thousands of worlds, and technologies that could reshape the galaxy. Each prince sought an alliance that would elevate their own people's standing in the complex web of galactic politics. The welcoming ceremony took place in the Grand Hall, a spherical chamber at the station's heart where representatives could hover, stand, or swim according to their physiology. Liara wore the traditional ceremonial robes of her people, fabric that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, shifting between silver and deep blue as she moved. Prince Vashtor arrived first, as was proper for a warrior culture. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, his exoskeleton gleaming with ceremonial battle scarring. When he spoke, his voice resonated with harmonics that could shatter stone. Princess Liara, your reputation for wisdom precedes you. The Krillian Empire would be honored by an alliance. Yet even as he spoke the formal words, Liara could see his attention was elsewhere. His compound eyes tracked the defensive positions of the station's guard units. He was already planning how to take this place by force if negotiations failed. The Krillians respected strength above all else, and while they valued the Zephyrian navigation routes, they would prefer to simply conquer them. Prince Ziloth approached next, his form shifting subtly as different aspects of the collective consciousness took control. Sometimes he appeared more humanoid, sometimes more like the flowing, tentacled form of his base species. Princess, our collective finds your mental patterns intriguing. We sense great potential for synthesis. The Simbari prince extended what might have been a hand, and Liara felt the edges of the hive mind brushing against her consciousness. It was vast, containing the accumulated knowledge and experience of trillions of beings. For a moment, she glimpsed the universe through their collective perception, seeing patterns and connections that no individual mind could grasp. But she also felt her own identity beginning to dissolve at the edges. She withdrew her hand carefully. The experience is profound, Prince Ziloth. Perhaps too profound for someone raised as an individual. The mechanical precision of Prince Algorithm 779's movements drew her attention next. His current android body was crafted to appear aesthetically pleasing to most carbon-based species, but she could see the calculation behind his optical sensors. Princess Liara, our analysis indicates a 97.3% probability of successful alliance integration. Your people's navigation instincts, when enhanced with our computational matrices, could revolutionize galactic travel. You speak of my people as if they were equipment to be upgraded. Liara replied carefully. Is that not what all progress represents? The optimization of existing systems? The android's head tilted with curiosity that seemed genuine, though Liara knew it was merely sophisticated programming. The other princes made their approaches throughout the evening. Prince Harmonix of the Resonance Harmony demonstrated his ability to make objects dance in the air through gravitational manipulation, creating a beautiful display of floating lights that moved in complex mathematical patterns. Prince SHDWK of the Shadow Dominion appeared and disappeared around her, sometimes speaking from behind while his visible form stood in front, showcasing his dominion over dimensional space. Each demonstration was impressive. Each prince was accomplished in his own right. Yet as the evening wore on, Liara found herself feeling increasingly isolated. They all spoke of what their peoples could gain from alliance with the Zephyrians, but none seemed particularly interested in her as an individual. She was a valuable asset to be acquired, a key to unlock the benefits her empire could provide. The formal presentations continued for 3 days. Each delegation showcased their achievements, their technology, their culture. The Krillians demonstrated their military might with holographic displays of their greatest victories. The Simbari shared portions of their collective consciousness, allowing visitors to temporarily experience enhanced perception and cognition. The Machinates unveiled technological marvels that bordered on magic. During the private audiences, Liara met with each prince individually. Prince Vashtor spoke of the glorious battles they could fight together, the enemies they could crush. But his idea of partnership involved her people serving as navigators for his conquests. Prince Ziloth offered her a place in the collective consciousness where she would never be alone again, but she would also never again be herself. Prince Algorithm 779 presented detailed plans for optimizing her empire's efficiency, but his optimization seemed to involve replacing most of the population with androids. They all offer me everything except a choice, Liara confided to her personal guard, Commander Yeltar, as they walked through the station's garden dome on the third evening. Perhaps that is the nature of political alliance, Your Highness. We sacrifice individual desires for the greater good of our people. But should I not at least feel some connection to the person I'm expected to spend my life with? Some sense that they see me as more than a stepping stone to greater power. Commander Yeltar was about to respond when an alert chimed through the station's communication system. Attention, all delegates. An unscheduled vessel, is requesting permission to dock. Please stand by. Through the garden's transparent dome, Liara could see a new ship approaching. It was unlike anything she had seen before, smaller than the other vessels, with a blocky, industrial design that seemed to prioritize function over aesthetics. The hull showed signs of wear and repair, suggesting it had traveled far and seen hard use. "What delegation is this?" she asked. Commander Yeltar was accessing his communication device. "Unknown, Your Highness. They claim to represent something called the Terran Republic. The navigation database shows no record of this government." Minister Thalquan materialized beside them, his expression puzzled. "Your Highness, this is irregular. The ship appears to be from a previously unknown species. They're requesting an audience with you specifically." "Me? How do they even know who I am?" "They claim to have intercepted communications about the marriage negotiations. Their representative insists they have something valuable to offer." Through the dome, Liara watched as the strange ship docked with one of the smaller airlocks. It was so much smaller than the massive vessels that had brought the other princes that it seemed almost comical by comparison. "Should we refuse them entry, Your Highness?" Commander Yeltar asked. Liara considered this. In 3 days, none of the established princes had shown any real interest in her beyond what her empire could provide. Perhaps a representative from an unknown species might offer a different perspective. "No," she decided. "I'm curious about these Terrans. Let them present their case." An hour later, Liara waited in the smaller reception chamber typically used for minor diplomatic meetings. She had chosen this venue deliberately, not wanting to elevate the unknown delegation's importance in the eyes of the other princes. Minister Thalquan and Commander Yeltar flanked her, while Emperor Kethvar observed from a viewing alcove above. The doors opened, and Liara felt her breath catch in surprise. The being that entered was unlike any species she had encountered. Roughly her own height, bipedal, with a bilateral symmetry similar to Zephyrian's, but lacking any of the elegant markings or luminescent features that characterized most advanced species. The being's skin was a warm brown color, and dark hair covered the top of its head. What struck her most were its eyes, a deep brown that seemed to hold both intelligence and something she couldn't identify. The being wore simple clothing, practical rather than ceremonial, and moved with a confident stride that suggested comfort in unfamiliar situations. When it spoke, its voice was clear and direct, translated through a small device attached to its collar. "Your Highness, I am Captain James Chun of the Terran Republic. I understand I'm interrupting important negotiations, and I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me." Liara found herself leaning forward slightly. Unlike the formal, ritualistic presentations of the other princes, this being, this human, spoke to her as if she were simply another person rather than a prize to be won. "Captain Chun," she replied, "I must admit, your arrival has certainly surprised us. We had no knowledge of your people's existence." "That's understandable, Your Highness. We're relatively new to this part of the galaxy. In fact, I should probably start by explaining that I'm not here as a prince or royal representative. I'm the captain of a merchant vessel that happened to intercept communications about your situation." Minister Thalquan stepped forward, his markings flashing with indignation. "Captain, this is a formal diplomatic gathering between royal houses. Perhaps you misunderstood the nature of these proceedings." James Chin nodded respectfully, but didn't back down. "I understand perfectly, Minister. I'm not here to compete with the princes for a political alliance. I'm here because I thought the princess should know she has other options." "Other options?" Liara asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "The way I understand it, you're being asked to choose between military conquest, collective consciousness absorption, technological assimilation, or various other forms of cultural dominance disguised as alliance. I thought you might want to hear about a different approach." Commander Yeltar's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. "You speak very casually about matters of galactic importance, alien." "Human," James corrected mildly. "And you're right, I do. Where I come from, we believe that the most important decisions in a person's life shouldn't be made by committee or for political convenience. It should be made by the person who has to live with the consequences. Liara felt something stir within her chest, a sensation she couldn't quite name. And what exactly are you proposing, Captain Chun? I'm proposing that you don't have to choose any of these princes if none of them appeal to you. I'm proposing that marriage should be based on mutual respect and affection rather than political advantage. And I'm proposing that if you're interested in seeing what the galaxy looks like beyond the borders of empire politics, my ship could use a navigator. The chamber fell silent. From the viewing alcove, Liara could sense her father's shock and anger. Minister Thalquan's markings were cycling through colors that indicated diplomatic crisis. Commander Yeltar looked as though he was calculating the best angle of attack. But Liara found herself smiling for the first time in days. You're offering me employment, Captain? I'm offering you freedom, Your Highness. The job's just how you'd pay for it. Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as Minister Thalquan received an urgent communication. Your Majesty, he called to the viewing alcove. We're receiving distress signals from the outer system. A Void Reaper fleet has emerged from dark space. They're moving toward the inhabited worlds. Emperor Kethvar's voice boomed through the chamber speakers. How many ships? Initial scans indicate at least 50 Void Reaper vessels, Your Majesty. The Krillian delegation is requesting immediate tactical coordination. Prince Vashtor wishes to speak with you about defensive strategies. Liara felt ice form in her stomach. The Void Reapers were one of the galaxy's greatest threats, a nomadic species that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space in their wake. They appeared without warning, struck with overwhelming force, and disappeared back into the void between galaxies. Captain Chun, she said, turning to the human who had remained surprisingly calm despite the crisis. I assume your ship is capable of faster-than-light travel. Yes, Your Highness. Then, perhaps this conversation should continue elsewhere. It appears we may all need to relocate rather quickly. James Chung glanced at the flashing red lights and the urgent activity of the Zephyrian officials. Your Highness, if you're seriously considering leaving with me, I should probably mention that my ship is currently the only vessel in this system that doesn't appear on any Void Reaper target databases. And why is that? Because until a few days ago, they didn't know humans existed either. Liara looked around the chamber at the controlled chaos erupting as her father's empire prepared for war against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. Then, she looked at the calm, steady gaze of the human captain who had just offered her something no one else had. A choice. Commander Yeltar, she said quietly, please escort Captain Chun to his ship, and have someone pack my personal effects. Your Highness, you cannot be serious. I am completely serious, Commander. It appears that choosing between princes has become a moot point. The Void Reapers have made that decision for me. As the alarms continued to wail and the station prepared for evacuation, Princess Liara Vexthani walked beside Captain James Chun toward an uncertain future, leaving behind the princes who had never bothered to ask what she actually wanted. Behind them, the greatest powers in the galaxy prepared to face an enemy that consumed worlds, while ahead lay a small human ship and the vast unknown of space beyond the Empire's borders. For the first time in her life, Liara felt truly free to choose her own path. The question now was whether that choice would lead to adventure or disaster, or perhaps both. The human ship was nothing like what Princess Liara had expected. Where the vessels of the Galactic Princes were monuments to their civilization's achievements, Captain Chin's ship seemed designed purely for function. The corridors were narrow, but efficient, the walls lined with access panels and monitoring equipment rather than decorative elements. Welcome aboard the Wanderer, James said as he led her through the ship. She's not much to look at, but she's reliable. Liara noticed everything was built to human proportions, roughly the same as Zephyrian, which was fortunate. The gravity felt slightly heavier than she was used to, and the air had a different quality, carrying scents of metal and something organic she couldn't identify. Where's your crew? Captain, she asked as they passed through what appeared to be a common area, with several empty chairs arranged around a table. Currently, I'm the crew, James replied. The Wanderer was designed for a team of 4, but I've been operating solo for the past few months. The automation handles most of the routine functions. You travel the galaxy alone? Not by choice originally. My crew decided to take jobs closer to home after our last cargo run went sideways. I stayed because he paused at a viewport, looking out at the chaos surrounding the orbital station. Because there's still so much to discover out here. Through the viewport, Liara could see the evacuation beginning. The massive ships of the alien princes were powering up their defensive systems, while smaller vessels ferried dignitaries and staff to safety. In the distance, space itself seemed to ripple as the Void Reaper fleet approached. Shouldn't we be leaving? She asked. Already are, James replied, checking a display panel. We disengaged from the station 5 minutes ago. The Wanderer's engines are quieter than most. Liara realized she hadn't felt the ship moving at all. Your technology is quite advanced. Different, maybe. Humans develop spaceflight independently, so our solutions to common problems tend to be unique. He gestured toward the bridge. Would you like to see how we navigate? I'm curious to learn about your people's techniques. The bridge was compact, but sophisticated, with controls laid out in patterns that suggested human ergonomics rather than aesthetic considerations. James settled into the pilot's chair, while Liara examined the navigation display. This is remarkable, she said, studying the three-dimensional star chart. Your mapping system shows spatial relationships in ways I've never seen. Human brains are good at recognizing patterns in three-dimensional space. We evolved from tree-dwelling ancestors who had to judge distances between branches. James began entering coordinates. What's interesting is how your people navigate. I've heard Zephyrians can sense hyperspace currents directly. It's not exactly sensing them, Liara explained, settling into the navigator's chair. It's more like intuition. We can feel the safest path between stars the way you might feel the warmest spot in a room. That's incredible. Our navigation relies entirely on calculations and sensor data. James paused his work. Would you be willing to show me? I mean, only if you're comfortable with it. I understand if sharing navigation techniques is sensitive. Liara considered this. Navigation secrets were among the most closely guarded knowledge in the Zephyrian Empire. But James had offered her freedom when no one else had even offered her a choice. More importantly, the traditional rules seemed less relevant when running from Void Reapers. I can try, she said, but you'll need to interface your navigation system with mine. Interface how? Place your hands on the navigation controls, and I'll place mine over yours. The connection will allow me to feel what your ship is sensing. James looked uncertain, but extended his hands to the control interface. When Liara placed her hands over his, she felt the slight warmth of his skin and the steady pulse of his blood. But more than that, she felt the ship's sensors reaching into space, gathering data about gravitational fields, electromagnetic currents, and the quantum fluctuations that mark safe passage through hyperspace. Now watch, she said softly, closing her eyes and extending her consciousness through the ship's sensors. The navigation display suddenly came alive with new information. Lines of force that had been invisible to the ship's sensors appeared as flowing streams of light, showing the currents that connected star systems. Safe passage routes glowed with gentle illumination, while dangerous areas pulsed with warning colors. Incredible, James whispered. It's like seeing the ocean currents for the first time. This is how my people have always seen space, Liara explained. The paths are there for anyone to follow, but most species try to force their way through rather than flowing with the natural currents. She guided his hands to select a route that would take them away from the battle zone and toward the outer rim of the galaxy. The path she chose was longer than the direct route, but would be virtually undetectable to pursuing ships. Where does this lead? James asked. Away, Liara replied, opening her eyes. To systems on the edge of known space. Places where we can disappear while deciding what comes next. The hyperspace jump was unlike anything Liara had experienced. Human jump technology felt different from Zephyrian systems, less elegant, but somehow more solid. Where her people's ships seemed to dance between dimensions, the Wanderer pushed through hyperspace with determined force. "How long until we reach your selected destination?" James asked as they settled into the hyperspace tunnel. "Approximately 18 hours. This gives us time to talk." "About what?" Liara looked around the bridge of the human ship, so different from the ornate chambers where she had spent her life. "About what I've just done. About what happens next. About your people and mine." James nodded, settling back in his chair. "Fair enough. Where would you like to start? Tell me about humans. Not the technical specifications of your ships or the political structure of your republic. Tell me what it's like to be human." James was quiet for a moment, considering her question. "That's not easy to answer. Humans are diverse. We come from one planet originally, but we've spread out and developed different cultures, different ways of living. What unites us, I think, is that we tend to value individual choice and the right to determine our own destiny. Is that why you offer me employment rather than marriage?" "Partly, but also because the whole setup felt wrong. You're clearly intelligent and capable. The princes I observed seemed more interested in what your empire could do for them than in who you are as a person." Liara felt something warm spread through her chest. "No one has ever said anything like that to me before." "Really? That's hard to believe. You don't understand. I've been groomed since childhood to be a valuable alliance partner. Everything I learned, every skill I developed, was chosen for how it would make me more attractive to potential suitors. My education, my training, even my personal interests were all shaped by what would best serve the Empire." James turned to face her fully. "What would you have chosen for yourself?" The question caught Liara off guard. She realized that no one had ever asked her that before. I'm not sure. I've never really thought about it that way." "Well, we have 18 hours. Maybe you can start thinking about it now." They spent the next several hours talking. James told her about Earth, about human history, about the struggles his people had faced as they learned to work together despite their differences. He spoke of exploration and discovery, of the human drive to see what lay beyond the next horizon. Liara found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Her frustration with court protocols, her desire to see worlds beyond the Empire's borders, her longing for genuine connection rather than political alliance. "It sounds lonely," James observed. "It was. Until today, I thought that was just how life was supposed to be. And now? Now I'm sitting on an alien ship traveling to unknown space with someone who offered me a job instead of a marriage proposal. I'm either having the greatest adventure of my life or making the worst mistake imaginable." James smiled, a human expression that Liara found surprisingly easy to interpret. "In my experience, the best adventures usually start with decisions that seem like terrible mistakes." They were interrupted by an alert from the ship's communication system. A message was coming through from long-range transmitters, somehow reaching them even in hyperspace. "That shouldn't be possible," James said, moving to the communications console. Hyperspace transmission requires incredibly sophisticated equipment. The message was from Emperor Kethvar, transmitted with the full power of the Zephyrian Empire's communication array. His image appeared in the center of the bridge, flickering slightly from the hyperspace interference. "Liara," her father's voice carried all the authority of absolute rule. "You will return to the Empire immediately. Your actions have created a diplomatic crisis at the worst possible moment. The princes are offended, our allies are questioning our reliability, and the Void Reapers continue their advance." Liara felt the familiar weight of expectation and duty pressing down on her. For a moment, she was the obedient princess again, ready to sacrifice her desires for the greater good. Then, she looked at James, who was watching the message with careful attention, but made no move to change course or attempt to influence her response. "The choice is yours," he said quietly. "I'll take you back if that's what you decide." The simple acknowledgement of her agency strengthened her resolve. She activated the transmission system to send a reply. "Father, I understand your concerns, but I will not be returning. I've spent my entire life being prepared for a marriage that would serve the Empire's interests rather than my own. The Void Reaper attack has shown that all the political alliances in the galaxy mean nothing against a truly external threat. Emperor Kethvar's expression shifted from authority to concern. Daughter, you don't understand the consequences of your actions. Without a strong alliance, we're exactly where we are right now, Liara interrupted. Fighting for survival against an enemy that doesn't care about our political arrangements. I'm going to find a different way to help our people. One that doesn't require sacrificing my life to seal a deal. And what way is that? Liara glanced at James, then back at her father's image. I'm going to learn about the galaxy beyond our borders. There are species out there we've never contacted, technologies we've never seen, solutions to problems we've never imagined. If we're going to survive as more than just another conquered empire, we need to think beyond traditional alliances. Emperor Kethvar was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, more like the father she remembered from childhood than the emperor she served as an adult. You sound like your mother, he said. She always believed there were answers to be found beyond the borders of known space. What happened to those beliefs? She died in a Void Reaper attack 20 years ago. I thought keeping you safe meant keeping you close to home. Liara felt tears forming in her eyes. Her mother's death had shaped her entire upbringing, but she had never understood how deeply it had affected her father's worldview. Father, I can't honor her memory by hiding. If she believed in exploration and discovery, then maybe that's the path I should follow. And if you're killed like she was, then at least I'll have died trying to find a solution rather than waiting for someone else to save us. The transmission flickered as hyperspace interference increased. I cannot officially approve of your actions, her father said finally. But be careful, daughter. Send word when you can. And remember that you'll always have a home to return to. The connection ended, leaving Liara and James alone on the bridge. She wiped her eyes, surprised by how much the conversation had affected her. I'm sorry, James said. That must have been difficult. It was necessary. For the first time, I felt like I was talking to my father instead of the Emperor. Do you regret your decision? Liara considered this as she watched the swirling lights of hyperspace flow past the viewport. No, but I'm scared. I've never made a decision this important without considering how it would affect the Empire first. Fear is natural when you're choosing an uncertain future over a predictable one. But it's also the first step toward real freedom. They emerged from hyperspace near a small star system on the edge of known space. 3 planets orbited a yellow star, with the middle world showing signs of life, but no technological civilization. It was exactly the kind of place where they could disappear while planning their next move. What now? Liara asked as James began scanning for a safe place to land. Now we figure out what we want to do next. You wanted to explore beyond the Empire's borders? This is your chance. You want to find new solutions to old problems? Out here, we're free to experiment. And if I decide I've made a mistake, then I take you home, and we both pretend this never happened. Liara watched the planet grow larger on the view screen as they descended toward the surface. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that was nothing like the carefully managed worlds of the Empire. Here, she could be anyone, do anything, become whoever she chose to be. Captain Shun, she said as they broke through the planet's atmosphere. James, if we're going to be traveling together, you should use my name. James. The human name felt strange on her tongue, but not unpleasant. I have a question. What's that? You said you've been traveling alone for months. Don't you get lonely? James was quiet for a moment as he guided the ship toward a landing site near a freshwater lake. Yes, he said finally. Edo. Then, perhaps we can help each other. I need to learn about the galaxy beyond my empire's borders. You need a navigator who can find paths other ships can't follow. And maybe we both need someone to share the journey with. That sounds like a fair arrangement, James agreed as the ship touched down on solid ground. As they shut down the engines and prepared to explore their first planet together, Liara felt something she had never experienced before. The excitement of facing an uncertain future with someone who valued her choices more than her political connections. Outside the viewports, an alien world waited to be explored, and beyond that lay the vast unknown of space itself. For the first time in her life, Princess Liara Vexthani was free to choose her own adventure. The only question was what kind of adventure it would become. The planet they had landed on was beautiful in a way that took Liara's breath away. The Zephyrian worlds were carefully terraformed, every aspect designed for maximum efficiency and aesthetic appeal. This world was wild, natural, with purple-leaved trees that swayed in wind patterns she couldn't predict, and crystalline formations that caught the system's yellow sunlight and scattered it into rainbow fragments. "The air is breathable," James reported, checking his scanner. "Slightly higher oxygen content than standard, which might make us feel energized. No signs of dangerous pathogens or toxins. No signs of intelligent life, either?" Liara asked, studying her own readings. "Not technologically advanced life, anyway. But there's definitely complex biology here." James sealed his equipment and moved toward the ship's airlock. "Want to take a walk? After days in space, I always like to feel real ground under my feet." Liara followed him outside, marveling at the sensation of natural wind on her skin. The gravity was slightly lighter than she was used to, making each step feel bouncy and energetic. The sounds were entirely new, not the mechanical hums and controlled atmospherics of a space station, but the organic symphony of a living world. "It's incredible," she said, watching small flying creatures that looked like jeweled butterflies dance between the crystal formations. "Every world is different," James replied, kneeling to examine some of the purple vegetation. "That's what I love about exploration. You never know what you're going to find." They spent the morning exploring the area around the ship, documenting the local life forms and geological features. Liara found herself relaxing in a way she never had before. Without protocols to follow or diplomatic objectives to consider, she could simply experience the wonder of discovery. It was during their afternoon rest by the lake that the ship's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. "More news from home?" James asked as they returned to the bridge. "No," Liara said, checking the message origin. "This is coming from much closer. Someone else is in this system." The transmission resolved into a holographic display showing a figure unlike any either of them had seen before. The being appeared to be made of living stone, with a humanoid shape, but surface textures that shifted and flowed like liquid rock. When it spoke, its voice had a deep, resonant quality like distant thunder. "Unknown vessel. This is granite flow over ancient bedrock of the Lithos Collective. We detected your ship's arrival and wish to determine your intentions in our sanctuary system." James and Liara exchanged glances. They had unknowingly intruded on someone's territory. "This is Captain James Chun of the Terran Republic," James responded. "We're explorers seeking a temporary safe harbor. We had no knowledge this system was inhabited and meant no intrusion." Terran Republic, the stone being repeated thoughtfully. "This designation is unknown to us. From where do you originate?" "We're from beyond the galactic core, relatively new to this region of space. My companion is Princess Liara of the Zephyrian Empire, though she's currently traveling independently." The being called Granite Flow over Ancient Bedrock was silent for a moment, its surface patterns shifting more rapidly. "Zephyrian Empire. Yes, this is known to us. Your people are skilled navigators, but have never ventured to the galactic rim. Unusual. We would speak with you in person. Are you willing to meet?" Liara stepped forward. "We would be honored to meet with representatives of the Lithos Collective. Where would you suggest?" "There's a neutral ground on the third moon of this system's outer planet. We have established a meeting place there for encounters with other species. It has atmospheric conditions suitable for both your biologies." Within hours, they were traveling to the outer system, following coordinates provided by the Lithos Collective. The meeting place turned out to be a remarkable structure, a series of interconnected domes built from the same flowing stone material as the beings themselves. The domes provided different atmospheric zones for various species, connected by airlocks and universal translation systems. They've clearly done this before, James observed as they docked with the facility. But not with humans, Liara noted. This could be first contact between your species, and there's... The Lithos delegation consisted of 3 beings, each with slightly different stone patterns and colorations. Granite flow over ancient bedrock appeared to be their leader, while the other 2 were introduced as quartz singing in solar wind and obsidian sharp against void. We are curious about this Terran Republic, Granite Flow said after formal greetings were exchanged. Our knowledge of the galaxy's species is extensive, but we have no record of humans. James explained briefly about human expansion into space and their recent arrival in this region of the galaxy. The Lithos beings listened with interest, occasionally asking questions about human technology and culture. And you, Princess Liara, court singing said, her voice like whined through stone caverns. Why does a royal heir travel with an unknown species rather than securing alliances within the established galactic hierarchy? Liara found herself explaining her situation, the marriage negotiations, the Void Reaper attack, her decision to seek alternatives to traditional political alliances. The Lithos beings listened without interruption, their stone surfaces shifting with what seemed to be concentration. Fascinating, Obsidian Sharp commented. You chose uncertainty over security, exploration over exploitation. I chose freedom over obligation, Liara replied, though I'm still learning what that means. The Lithos beings exchanged complex patterns of color and texture across their surfaces, apparently a form of visual communication among their kind. We understand your situation more than you might realize, Granite Flow said finally. The Lithos Collective has remained hidden in this region precisely to avoid the political machinations of the galactic powers. We have seen what happens to species that become entangled in their alliance systems. What do you mean? James asked. Quartz Singing gestured toward a holographic display that showed star maps of the region. Every few centuries, the major powers engage in conflicts that consume entire sectors. Species are forced to choose sides, resources are diverted to war efforts, and smaller civilizations are absorbed or destroyed in the process. We chose isolation to preserve our independence. But isolation has its costs, Obsidian Sharp added. We have avoided destruction, but we have also limited our growth and development. There is much we could learn from contact with other species, but such contact always carries the risk of exposure to galactic politics. Liara studied the star map, seeing patterns in the Lithos territory that her navigator training helped her recognize. You've chosen systems that are difficult to reach through normal hyperspace routes. Natural barriers that discourage exploration. Precisely. But your arrival demonstrates that such barriers are not absolute. If humans and Zephyrians working together can find us, others might as well. Is that necessarily a bad thing? James asked. Contact doesn't have to mean conflict. The 3 Lithos beings shared another rapid exchange of visual patterns before Granite Flow responded. Perhaps not. But in our experience, first contact with galactic powers typically leads to demands for resource sharing, territorial concessions, or military alliance. We prefer to make such connections on our own terms. What if there was another way? Liara asked, an idea beginning to form in her mind. What if contact could be made without the traditional political frameworks? Explain. The established galactic powers operate on principles of dominance and absorption. When they encounter a new species, they immediately try to determine how that species can serve their interests. But what if contact was based on mutual benefit and voluntary cooperation instead? James caught on to her thinking. You're talking about a different kind of alliance. One based on shared interests rather than political control. Exactly. The Lithos Collective has knowledge and resources that could benefit other species. Humans bring unique perspectives and technologies. Zephyrians offer navigation expertise. Rather than one group trying to dominate the others, we could create a network of cooperation. Obsidian Sharp's surface patterns shifted to what seemed like excitement. A confederation of independent entities sharing resources and knowledge without surrendering sovereignty. It's been tried before, Chord Singing pointed out. Such arrangements typically collapse when one member becomes powerful enough to dominate the others. Then, the key is to ensure no single member becomes dominant, Liara replied. Maintain independence while sharing specific resources and capabilities. Granite Flow considered this. You propose to create an alternative to the traditional galactic power structure. This is ambitious, also dangerous. The established powers would not welcome competition to their alliance systems, which is why it would need to start small, with species that value independence over expansion, James said. The Lithos Collective would be an ideal founding member of such a confederation. As would humans, Liara added. Your people seem to value individual choice and voluntary cooperation. And what of the Zephyrian Empire? Obsidian Sharp asked. Would they support such an arrangement? Liara considered this carefully. The Empire itself might not initially, but there are others like me who believe we need alternatives to traditional alliance systems, especially after the Void Reaper attack demonstrated how vulnerable the current political arrangements really are. The conversation continued for hours, exploring the practical aspects of such a confederation. The Lithos beings shared information about other independent species in the Rim territories, while James and Liara described the resources and capabilities their peoples could contribute. There is one immediate test of this concept, Granite Flow said, as the meeting drew to a close. The Void Reapers you mentioned are not unknown to us. We have encountered their scouts before, though they have never found our core territories. Scouts? Liara asked, alarmed. The attack on your marriage summit was likely not random. The Void Reapers have been systematically probing galactic defenses, testing response capabilities. They appear to be preparing for a larger offensive. James felt ice form in his stomach. How larger? From what we have observed, they are massing a force capable of consuming entire sectors. The established galactic powers may find their traditional alliance systems inadequate to mount an effective defense. Then, this confederation idea isn't just about independence, Liara realized. It might be about survival. Quartz Singing nodded. Precisely. The Void Reapers have adapted their tactics to exploit the weaknesses of traditional hierarchical command structures. They strike at alliance leaders and communication hubs, causing entire defense networks to collapse. A distributed confederation might prove more resilient. So what do we do? James asked. We start building the network, Granite Flow replied. We begin with the species already inclined toward independence and voluntary cooperation. We share intelligence about Void Reaper movements and defensive strategies. And we prepare for the possibility that the next attack will be much larger than the last. The meeting concluded with an agreement to establish regular communication between the three groups. The Lithos Collective would share their knowledge of independent Rim species. Humans would provide their unique technological perspectives, and Liara would serve as a bridge to potential allies within the established galactic powers. As they returned to their ship, Liara felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. What had started as an escape from unwanted marriage negotiations was becoming something much more significant. Do you think it can work? She asked James as they settled into hyperspace for the journey to their next destination. I think it has to work, he replied. The alternative is waiting for someone else to solve our problems, and that hasn't been going very well for anyone lately. Liara activated the navigation system, plotting a course toward the next system on their list of potential allies. Through the viewport, the stars seemed different now. Not distant lights in empty space, but possible homes to beings who might share their vision of voluntary cooperation over force dominance. For the first time since leaving the marriage summit, she felt like they had a real purpose beyond simply running away. They were building something new, something that might offer hope to species throughout the galaxy who valued independence and cooperation over conquest and absorption. The question now was whether they could build it fast enough to face whatever the Void Reapers were planning next 3 months after their first meeting with the Lithos Collective. Liara and James had contacted 17 different independent species across the galactic rim. Each encounter had brought new perspectives, new technologies, and new challenges to their growing confederation. The resonant minds were energy beings who existed as pure thought, capable of instantaneous communication across vast distances. The adaptive colonies were shape-shifting organisms that could modify their biology to survive in any environment. The time-touched wanderers existed partially outside normal space-time, able to perceive probability streams and potential futures. Our communication network now spans 12 sectors, Liara reported during their latest conference call with granite flow over ancient bedrock. But coordination is becoming increasingly difficult. The diversity of our confederation is both its strength and its weakness, the Lithos leader agreed. We need a more sophisticated organizational structure. James looked up from his latest engineering project, an attempt to integrate human, Zephyrian, and Lithos technologies into a unified communication system. What if we don't try to create a centralized structure at all? What if we design the network to function without any single point of coordination? Explain, came the harmonic voice of Melody Across Stars, a resonant mind who had joined their conversation from halfway across the galaxy. Human history is full of examples where centralized organizations became targets for enemies or corrupted by power. But we've also developed systems that work through distributed cooperation, like our early internet networks or biological ecosystems. Liara pulled up a holographic display showing the current Confederation membership. You're suggesting we model our organization on natural systems rather than political hierarchies. Exactly. Each member species contributes what they do best and receives what they need most. No single authority controls everything, but the network as a whole responds to threats and opportunities. Over the following weeks, they implemented this distributed model. The resonant minds became the Confederation's communication backbone, providing instantaneous coordination across vast distances. The Lithos Collective served as information hubs, their patient stone-based cognition ideal for long-term strategic planning. Humans contributed their adaptability and problem-solving creativity, while Zephyrians provided navigation expertise that allowed the network to operate across previously impassable regions of space. The system's first real test came when Void Reaper scouts were detected near time-touched Wanderer territory. The probability streams are converging, reported Temporal Echo Dancing, speaking for the Wanderers. We perceive a 73% likelihood of major Void Reaper offensive within the next 6 standard months. Target appears to be the Krillian Empire's core systems. The same Krillians from your marriage summit, James noted to Liara. Prince Vashtor's people. Can we warn them? Liara asked. More importantly, can we help them? Added Quartz singing in Solar Wind from the Lithos hub. Our Confederation's stated purpose is mutual defense. The Krillians won't accept help from unknown species, Liara pointed out. Their warrior culture demands they face threats with their own strength. Then, perhaps they need to meet humans, James suggested. As a recently contacted species, humans wouldn't trigger their cultural restrictions about accepting outside aid. Melody Across Stars harmonized thoughtfully. The Confederation could provide intelligence and support while humans serve as the primary contact. This maintains Krillian honor while providing effective assistance. The plan they developed was complex but elegant. James would approach the Krillian Empire as a representative of humanity seeking to establish trade relations. During these negotiations, he would gradually reveal intelligence about Void Reaper movements and offer human technological assistance. Meanwhile, Confederation members would position themselves to provide support without directly violating Krillian cultural taboos. Are you certain you want to do this? Liara asked as they prepared to enter Krillian space. Prince Vashtor isn't exactly known for his diplomatic flexibility. I'm certain we need to try, James replied. Besides, I'm curious to see how humans stack up against the galaxy's premier warriors. The Krillian Empire's capital system was a fortress among the stars. Massive defense platforms surrounded each inhabited world, while patrol fleets moved in precisely choreographed formations that demonstrated both power and discipline. When the Wanderer requested permission to approach, the response was immediate and intimidating. Unknown vessel. You are entering sovereign Krillian space. State your origin, destination, and business, or be destroyed. This is Captain James Chun representing the Terran Republic. We seek an audience with appropriate authorities to discuss mutual trade opportunities. There was a pause before the reply came. Terran Republic is not in our databases. You will be escorted to Station Prime for verification and interrogation. The escort consisted of 6 heavily armed Krillian fighters, each one capable of destroying the Wanderer several times over. James maintained steady course, while Liara monitored their communication channels. They're discussing whether to simply destroy us and be done with it, she reported quietly. Apparently unknown species are typically treated as potential threats. Fortunately, humans are good at being underestimated, James replied. Station Prime was a massive military installation that served as both fortress and administrative center. As they docked, Liara disguised her Zephyrian features with a holographic projector, appearing to be human while retaining her navigation abilities. Prince Vashtor was exactly as imposing as Liara remembered. 8 feet of armored exoskeleton, compound eyes that missed nothing, and harmonics in his voice that could shatter stone. When he entered the interrogation chamber where James and Liara waited, his presence filled the space like a physical force. Captain Chun. The prince's voice resonated with controlled power. Your species is unknown to us. From where do you originate? Earth, Your Highness. A world beyond the galactic core. We're relatively new to interstellar travel and seeking to establish peaceful relations with spacefaring civilizations. Prince Vashtor studied James with predatory intensity. You do not appear to be warriors. What could your people possibly offer the Krillian Empire? James had anticipated this question. Innovation, Your Highness. Human technology developed independently, leading to unique solutions to common problems. For example, our defensive systems. Show me. James activated a portable holographic projector, displaying technical specifications for human shield technology. The Krillian prince examined the data with the expertise of someone who understood warfare intimately. Interesting, he admitted grudgingly. Your approach to energy distribution is novel, but raw innovation means little without the strength to implement it. Perhaps a demonstration would be appropriate? James suggested. What followed was unlike any diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Prince Vashtor challenged James to personal combat, not to the death, but to test human capabilities against Krillian strength. James accepted, knowing that refusing would end any chance of productive communication. The combat arena was designed for Krillian physiology, high gravity, weapons that required enormous strength to wield effectively, and environmental hazards that would challenge even armored exoskeletons. James entered wearing a modified human combat suit, looking impossibly small compared to his opponent. You may begin when ready, Prince Vashtor announced, hefting a weapon that resembled a cross between a spear and a plasma cannon. James didn't try to match the prince's strength or aggression. Instead, he used human advantages, speed, agility, and tactical creativity. Where the prince attacked with overwhelming force, James deflected and redirected. Where the prince relied on armor and endurance, James used mobility and environmental awareness. The match lasted longer than anyone expected. While James couldn't defeat the Krillian prince in direct combat, he proved that human tactics could neutralize superior strength and armor. By the time Prince Vashtor called an end to the demonstration, both combatants had earned each other's respect. Your species is more formidable than appearances suggest, the prince admitted as they exited the arena. What did you truly come here to discuss? Intelligence, James replied. We've encountered evidence of Void Reaper activity in nearby sectors. My people believe a major offensive is being planned. Prince Vashtor's compound eyes focused intently on James. What evidence? Over the next hour, James shared carefully selected intelligence about Void Reaper movements, fleet compositions, and tactical patterns. He presented it as information gathered by human exploration vessels, omitting any reference to the Confederation or its diverse membership. This data is remarkably detailed, the prince observed. Your exploration fleet must be extensive. Humans are naturally curious, James replied. We tend to explore everywhere we can reach. And you share this intelligence freely? We share it because the Void Reapers threaten everyone. Humans may be new to interstellar politics, but we understand that some threats require cooperation to defeat. Prince Vashtor was silent for a long moment, weighing factors that only a warrior ruler could fully appreciate. The intelligence you provide confirms our own observations. We have detected increased Void Reaper activity along our borders. Will you accept human assistance in your defensive preparations? Krillian honor requires that we defend our territory with our own strength. But the prince paused, choosing his words carefully. Information exchange and technological consultation would not compromise our autonomy. Your people's innovations might complement our traditional tactics. The formal agreement they negotiated was simple but effective. Humans would provide intelligence and technological consultation, while Krillians would share tactical data and combat experience. Neither side would subordinate themselves to the other, but both would benefit from the exchange. As they prepared to leave Krillian space, Liara dropped her holographic disguise now that they were safely alone on their ship. That went better than I expected, she admitted. I thought Prince Vashtor would be completely inflexible. He's a warrior, but he's also a leader responsible for protecting his people, James replied. When you present him with a threat that requires new approaches, he adapts. Do you think he suspected my identity? Probably. But as long as you were helping defend his empire, he didn't care who you really were. Their communication system chimed with an incoming message from the Confederation network. Temporal echo dancing appeared in holographic form, its shifting temporal existence making the image flicker between different probability states. The probability streams have shifted, the time-touched wanderer reported. Krillian defensive preparations are now factored into Void Reaper tactical calculations. The enemy is adapting their strategy. Adapting how? Liara asked. They are accelerating their timetable and expanding their target list. The offensive will begin within 30 standard days and will encompass multiple sectors simultaneously. James felt his stomach drop. How many sectors? 7, including territories controlled by the Simbari Collective, the Machinate Hierarchies, and the Shadow Dominion. The Void Reapers intend to eliminate all major galactic powers in a single coordinated strike. Liara stared at the probability projections flowing across their display. They're not just attacking individual empires. They're trying to destroy the entire galactic civilization, which means our little confederation is about to become the galaxy's only hope for organized resistance, James realized. The weight of that responsibility settled over them as they plotted course for the Confederation's emergency gathering point. What had started as a personal choice to avoid unwanted marriage had become a desperate race to save countless billions of lives. But for the first time since leaving the marriage summit, Liara felt genuinely hopeful. They had built something unprecedented, a network of cooperation that spanned dozens of species and thousands of star systems. If anyone could find a way to stop the Void Reapers, it would be this unlikely alliance of free beings working together by choice rather than conquest. The only question was whether they had enough time to coordinate an effective response before the darkness between galaxies descended upon them. The Confederation's emergency gathering brought together representatives from 43 different species at a hidden station in the void between galaxies. The massive structure had been built by the adaptive colonies, its biomechanical systems capable of supporting every conceivable form of life simultaneously. In the central chamber, beings of matter and energy, flesh and crystal, thought and plasma gathered to face the greatest threat their galaxy had ever known. The Void Reapers have begun their offensive, reported temporal echo dancing, its form flickering between multiple probability states. 7 simultaneous strikes across the core sectors. Initial resistance has been insufficient. The holographic display showed the scope of the catastrophe. Entire star systems were going dark as the Void Reaper fleets consumed everything in their path. The established galactic powers, caught off guard by the coordinated assault, were struggling to mount any coherent defense. The Krillian Empire's third fleet has been destroyed, added a new voice. Commander Yeltar, Liara's former guard captain, had arrived with a small flotilla of Zephyrian ships whose crews had chosen to follow their princess rather than their emperor. Prince Vashtor is requesting immediate assistance. The Simbari Collective has lost contact with 17 colony worlds, harmonized melody across stars. The hive mind is fragmenting under the psychological assault. Granite flow over ancient bedrocks, stone surface shifted through deep, troubled patterns. The machinate hierarchies are attempting to upload their populations into digital storage, but the Void Reapers appear capable of corrupting their quantum networks. James studied the tactical displays, his mind racing through possibilities. They're not just consuming matter and energy anymore. They're specifically targeting each species' greatest strengths. They've learned how to attack the Simbari hive mind, corrupt machinate systems, and overwhelm Krillian military formations. Which means traditional defensive strategies are useless, Liara realized. Every time one of the galactic powers tries to use their signature advantages, the Void Reapers turn those advantages against them. But the Confederation represents something they haven't encountered before, suggested Obsidian Sharp against Void. Cooperation without hierarchy, strength through diversity rather than uniformity. Theory is elegant, came the crystalline voice of Prism Song, representing a species of living light. Implementation is challenge. How do 43 different species coordinate against enemy designed to exploit coordination weaknesses? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. The Confederation had been built on principles of voluntary cooperation and distributed authority, but those same principles made rapid military coordination nearly impossible. What if we don't try to coordinate in the traditional sense? James suggested. What if we design an entirely different kind of response? He activated the central holographic projector, showing a three-dimensional model of the current conflict. Look at how the Void Reapers are operating. They've studied the galactic powers and designed specific countermeasures for each one. But they're still thinking in terms of traditional warfare, centralized command, predictable tactics, exploitable weaknesses. Continue, encouraged temporal echo dancing. What if instead of trying to match their force with our own force, we respond in ways they can't predict or counter? What if we use the Confederation's diversity as a weapon itself? Liara caught on to his thinking. You're suggesting we don't fight them as a unified force at all. We fight them as 43 different species using 43 different approaches simultaneously. Exactly. The Void Reapers have prepared countermeasures for every known form of galactic warfare. But they can't prepare for tactics that have never been used together before. The plan that emerged from the next 6 hours of discussion was unlike anything in military history. Instead of traditional fleet actions, the Confederation would deploy what they called chaos swarms, loose collections of ships from different species using completely incompatible technologies and tactics. The resonant minds would provide instantaneous communication that bypassed normal space entirely, making Confederation forces impossible to predict or intercept. The time-touched wanderers would create temporal distortions that confused Void Reaper navigation systems. The adaptive colonies would shift their ship configurations constantly, preventing the enemy from developing effective countermeasures. "It's completely insane," admitted Commander Yeltar after reviewing the tactical plans. "No species in galactic history has ever attempted coordination between such diverse technologies." "Which is exactly why it might work," Liara replied. "The Void Reapers have spent eons studying and defeating organized military forces. They've never faced organized chaos. The first test came at the besieged Krillian fortress world of Kethmanar. 3 Void Reaper fleets had surrounded the planet, systematically destroying its defenses while the surviving population prepared for a final desperate stand. Prince Vashtor's forces were trapped on the surface, their ships destroyed, their warriors reduced to primitive ground combat against enemies that consumed matter itself. Confederation forces, this is granite flow over ancient bedrock coordinating the first Chaos Swarm deployment. All units, begin your approaches using individual tactical protocols. Do not attempt coordination with other species." What followed was a battle that defied every military doctrine ever developed. Human ships used guerrilla tactics, striking fast and disappearing before the Void Reapers could respond. Lithos vessels, nearly indestructible but slow-moving, serve as mobile fortresses that absorbed enemy fire while other Confederation ships attacked from unexpected angles. The adaptive colonies shifted their ship forms mid-combat, transforming from fighters to bombers to rescue vessels as needed. Resonant mines manifested as pure energy, passing through Void Reaper shields to disrupt their systems from within. Time-touched wanderers created probability storms that made accurate targeting impossible. "This is chaos," reported one of the Krillian ground commanders as he watched the battle unfold above his planet. "Precisely," replied James from the bridge of the Wanderer. "And chaos is something the Void Reapers were never designed to handle." The Void Reaper fleets, optimized for destroying organized resistance, found themselves unable to adapt to the Confederation's deliberately disorganized assault. Their tactical algorithms, based on eons of studying galactic military doctrine, had no framework for responding to 43 different species, each fighting according to their own unique protocols. Within 6 hours, the siege of Kethmanar was broken. The Void Reaper fleets, unable to coordinate an effective response to the Chaos Swarm, retreated into dark space to regroup and analyze this unprecedented form of warfare. "Impossible." Prince Vashtor, transmitted as Confederation rescue ships, evacuated his surviving warriors. "No alliance could coordinate such diverse forces effectively." "You're right," Liara replied from her position aboard a Lithos command vessel. "We didn't coordinate them at all. We just let each species do what they do best and trusted that the combination would be more than the Void Reapers could handle." News of the victory spread throughout the galaxy with impossible speed, carried by the Resonant Mind's thought-based communication network. For the first time since the Void Reaper offensive began, the established galactic powers had hoped that resistance was possible. But the Confederation's leaders knew their victory had been bought with surprise, and surprise was a weapon that could only be used once. "They will adapt," warned Temporal Echo Dancing during the post-battle analysis. "The Void Reapers learn quickly. Future probability streams show them developing countermeasures for chaos-based tactics. Then, we'll have to adapt faster than they can," James replied. "The advantage of true chaos is that it's adaptable by nature." The next phase of the war became a race between adaptation and counter-adaptation. The Void Reapers began deploying smaller, more flexible forces designed to respond to unpredictable tactics. The Confederation responded by making their chaos swarms even more random, including completely irrational elements that defied tactical analysis. The Prankster Collective, a species that had elevated practical jokes to an art form, joined the Confederation specifically to contribute tactical unpredictability. The quantum uncertains existed in multiple states simultaneously, making their ships impossible to target accurately. The Entropy Dancers embraced randomness so completely that even they didn't know what they would do next. "We're not fighting a war anymore," observed Quartz singing in solar wind as she reviewed reports from 17 different battle zones. We're conducting a galaxy-wide improvisational performance where the audience can kill us if we're not entertaining enough. Entertainment might be exactly what we need, Liara realized. The Void Reapers are creatures of pure logic and efficiency. What if we overwhelm them with pure irrationality and inefficiency? The final battle of the war took place not at any strategic location, but simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. The Confederation abandoned all pretense of military logic and instead launched what they called the ultimate performance, a galaxy-wide celebration of chaos, creativity, and the fundamental unpredictability of life itself. Art ships painted abstract masterpieces across star fields using exotic matter and controlled stellar fusion. Music beings broadcast symphonies through hyperspace that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of space-time. Comedy entities told jokes so absurd that reality itself began laughing along. The Void Reapers, encountering organized joy for the first time in their existence, found their tactical systems overloading. They had been designed to destroy, consume, and bring order to a chaotic universe. They had no programming for dealing with chaos that celebrated itself, destruction that created beauty, or enemies who fought by refusing to be enemies at all. In the end, the Void Reapers didn't retreat or surrender. They simply stopped. Faced with a universe that refused to take war seriously, they ceased their offensive and withdrew to the dark spaces between galaxies to contemplate this unprecedented phenomenon. Victory through absurdity, Commander Yeltar mused as he stood on the bridge of a celebration ship, watching fireworks explode in patterns that spelled out jokes in 17 different languages. Princess, your choice to avoid marriage negotiations may have saved the galaxy by teaching us not to take ourselves so seriously. Liara stood beside him, watching the greatest party in galactic history unfold across the stars. Beside her, James was attempting to learn the quantum uncertain victory dance, which involved existing in multiple positions simultaneously while maintaining perfect rhythm. I didn't save the galaxy, she replied. We all did. 43 species working together not because they had to, but because they chose to, not because someone ordered them to cooperate, but because cooperation turned out to be more fun than fighting. 6 months after the end of what historians would call the Absurdity War, Liara found herself standing on the observation deck of the Confederation's new mobile headquarters, a massive structure that was part space station, part art gallery, part university, and part ongoing celebration of diversity. Any regrets? James asked, joining her at the viewport where stars moved in patterns that had been deliberately choreographed to look like cosmic dance moves. About which part? Refusing to marry Prince Vashtor? Running away from the Empire? Accidentally starting a galactic confederation? Or helping defeat an intergalactic threat through interpretive dance? Any of it. All of it. Liara considered the question as she watched a prankster collective vessel execute a perfect loop-the-loop around a Lithos command ship, leaving a trail of rainbow-colored plasma in its wake. No regrets, she said finally, though I do wonder what my father thinks of all this. As if summoned by her words, the communications system chimed with an incoming message from the Zephyrian Empire. Emperor Kethvar's image appeared in the observation lounge, but he looked different than Liara remembered. Older, perhaps, but also somehow lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Daughter, he said, and his voice carried warmth rather than imperial authority. I wanted to personally thank you for your service to the galaxy. Thank me. The Confederation has accomplished something that centuries of traditional diplomacy could not. You've created a genuine alternative to the cycle of conquest and submission that has dominated galactic politics since recorded history began. We created it, Father. All of us working together. Emperor Kethvar smiled, an expression Liara couldn't remember seeing since her childhood. Yes, and the Zephyrian Empire would like to formally request membership in this confederation, not as rulers or subjects, but as equals among equals. And the other galactic powers? The Krillians have already joined, as have several Simbari colony clusters and a number of machinate sub-hierarchies. It seems that experiencing genuine cooperation has given many of us a taste for more of the same. After the conversation ended, Liara and James stood in comfortable silence, watching the ever-changing dance of ships outside their viewport. "So what happens now?" James asked eventually. "Now we explore," Liara replied. "There are other galaxies out there, other forms of life we haven't met yet. Maybe some of them are ready to learn about cooperation through celebration. And if we encounter more threats like the Void Reapers, then we'll probably defeat them through aggressive musical 3 months." After their first meeting with the Lithos Collective, Liara and James had contacted 17 different independent species across the galactic rim. Each encounter had brought new perspectives, new technologies, and new challenges to their growing confederation. The resonant minds were energy beings who existed as pure thought, capable of instantaneous communication across vast distances. The adaptive colonies were shape-shifting organisms that could modify their biology to survive in any environment. The time-touched wanderers existed partially outside normal space-time, able to perceive probability streams and potential futures. Our communication network now spans 12 sectors, Liara reported during their latest conference call with granite flow over ancient bedrock. But coordination is becoming increasingly difficult. The diversity of our confederation is both its strength and its weakness, the Lithos leader agreed. We need a more sophisticated organizational structure. James looked up from his latest engineering project, an attempt to integrate human, Zephyrian, and Lithos technologies into a unified communication system. What if we don't try to create a centralized structure at all? What if we design the network to function without any single point of coordination? "Explain," came the harmonic voice of Melody Across Stars, a resonant mind who had joined their conversation from halfway across the galaxy. Human history is full of examples where centralized organizations became targets for enemies or corrupted by power. But we've also developed systems that work through distributed cooperation, like our early internet networks or biological ecosystems. Liara pulled up a holographic display showing the current Confederation membership. "You're suggesting we model our organization on natural systems rather than political hierarchies." "Exactly. Each member species contributes what they do best and receives what they need most. No single authority controls everything, but the network as a whole responds to threats and opportunities." Over the following weeks, they implemented this distributed model. The resonant minds became the Confederation's communication backbone, providing instantaneous coordination across vast distances. The Lithos collectives served as information hubs, their patient stone-based cognition ideal for long-term strategic planning. Humans contributed their adaptability and problem-solving creativity, while Zephyrians provided navigation expertise that allowed the network to operate across previously impassable regions of space. The system's first real test came when Void Reaper scouts were detected near time-touched Wanderer territory. "The probability streams are converging," reported Temporal Echo Dancing, speaking for the Wanderers. "We perceive a 73% likelihood of major Void Reaper offensive within the next 6 standard months. Target appears to be the Krillian Empire's core systems." "The same Krillians from your marriage summit," James noted to Liara. "Prince Vashtor's people. Can we warn them?" Liara asked. "More importantly, can we help them?" added Court singing in Solar Wind from the Lithos hub. "Our Confederation's stated purpose is mutual defense." "The Krillians won't accept help from unknown species," Liara pointed out. "Their warrior culture demands they face threats with their own strength." "Then, perhaps they need to meet humans," James suggested. As a recently contacted species, humans wouldn't trigger their cultural restrictions about accepting outside aid. Melody Across Stars harmonized thoughtfully. "The Confederation could provide intelligence and support while humans serve as the primary contact. This maintains Krillian honor while providing effective assistance. The plan they developed was complex but elegant. James would approach the Krillian Empire as a representative of humanity seeking to establish trade relations. During these negotiations, he would gradually reveal intelligence about Void Reaper movements and offer human technological assistance. Meanwhile, Confederation members would position themselves to provide support without directly violating Krillian cultural taboos. "Are you certain you want to do this?" Liara asked as they prepared to enter Krillian space. Prince Vashtor isn't exactly known for his diplomatic flexibility. "I'm certain we need to try," James replied. "Besides, I'm curious to see how humans stack up against the galaxy's premier warriors." The Krillian Empire's capital system was a fortress among the stars. Massive defense platforms surrounded each inhabited world, while patrol fleets moved in precisely choreographed formations that demonstrated both power and discipline. When the Wanderer requested permission to approach, the response was immediate and intimidating. "Unknown vessel. You are entering sovereign Krillian space. State your origin, destination, and business, or be destroyed." This is Captain James Chun representing the Terran Republic. "We seek an audience with appropriate authorities to discuss mutual trade opportunities." There was a pause before the reply came. "Terran Republic is not in our databases. You will be escorted to Station Prime for verification and interrogation." The escort consisted of 6 heavily armed Krillian fighters, each one capable of destroying the Wanderer several times over. James maintained steady course, while Liara monitored their communication channels. "They're discussing whether to simply destroy us and be done with it," she reported quietly. "Apparently unknown species are typically treated as potential threats. Fortunately, humans are good at being underestimated," James replied. Station Prime was a massive military installation that served as both fortress and administrative center. As they docked, Liara disguised her Zephyrian features with a holographic projector, appearing to be human while retaining her navigation abilities. Prince Vashtor was exactly as imposing as Liara remembered: 8 feet of armored exoskeleton, compound eyes that missed nothing, and harmonics in his voice that could shatter stone. When he entered the interrogation chamber where James and Liara waited, his presence filled the space like a physical force. "Captain Chun." The prince's voice resonated with controlled power. "Your species is unknown to us. From where do you originate?" "Earth, Your Highness. A world beyond the galactic core. We're relatively new to interstellar travel and seeking to establish peaceful relations with spacefaring civilizations." Prince Vashtor studied James with predatory intensity. "You do not appear to be warriors. What could your people possibly offer the Krillian Empire?" James had anticipated this question. "Innovation, Your Highness. Human technology developed independently, leading to unique solutions to common problems. For example, our defensive systems." "Show me." James activated a portable holographic projector, displaying technical specifications for human shield technology. The Krillian prince examined the data with the expertise of someone who understood warfare intimately. "Interesting," he admitted grudgingly. "Your approach to energy distribution is novel, but raw innovation means little without the strength to implement it. Perhaps a demonstration would be appropriate," James suggested. What followed was unlike any diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Prince Vashtor challenged James to personal combat, not to the death, but to test human capabilities against Krillian strength. James accepted, knowing that refusing would end any chance of productive communication. The combat arena was designed for Krillian physiology, high gravity, weapons that required enormous strength to wield effectively, and environmental hazards that would challenge even armored exoskeletons. James entered wearing a modified human combat suit, looking impossibly small compared to his opponent. "You may begin when ready," Prince Vashtor announced, hefting a weapon that resembled a cross between a spear and a plasma cannon. James didn't try to match the prince's strength or aggression. Instead, he used human advantages: speed, agility, and tactical creativity. Where the prince attacked with overwhelming force, James deflected and redirected. Where the prince relied on armor and endurance, James used mobility and environmental awareness. The match lasted longer than anyone expected. While James couldn't defeat the Krillian prince in direct combat, he proved that human tactics could neutralize superior strength and armor. By the time Prince Vashtor called an end to the demonstration, both combatants had earned each other's respect. "Your species is more formidable than appearances suggest," the prince admitted as they exited the arena. "What did you truly come here to discuss?" "Intelligence," James replied. "We've encountered evidence of Void Reaper activity in nearby sectors. My people believe a major offensive is being planned." Prince Vashtor's compound eyes focused intently on James. "What evidence?" Over the next hour, James shared carefully selected intelligence about Void Reaper movements, fleet compositions, and tactical patterns. He presented it as information gathered by human exploration vessels, omitting any reference to the Confederation or its diverse membership. "This data is remarkably detailed," the prince observed. "Your exploration fleet must be extensive." "Humans are naturally curious," James replied. "We tend to explore everywhere we can reach." "And you share this intelligence freely?" "We share it because the Void Reapers threaten everyone. Humans may be new to interstellar politics, but we understand that some threats require cooperation to defeat." Prince Vashtor was silent for a long moment, weighing factors that only a warrior ruler could fully appreciate. "The intelligence you provide confirms our own observations. We have detected increased Void Reaper activity along our borders. Will you accept human assistance in your defensive preparations?" "Krillian honor requires that we defend our territory with our own strength." "But—" The prince paused, choosing his words carefully. "Information exchange and technological consultation would not compromise our autonomy. Your people's innovations might complement our traditional tactics." The formal agreement they negotiated was simple but effective. Humans would provide intelligence and technological consultation, while Krillians would share tactical data and combat experience. Neither side would subordinate themselves to the other, but both would benefit from the exchange. As they prepared to leave Krillian space, Liara dropped her holographic disguise now that they were safely alone on their ship. "That went better than I expected," she admitted. "I thought Prince Vashtor would be completely inflexible. He's a warrior, but he's also a leader responsible for protecting his people," James replied. "When you present him with a threat that requires new approaches, he adapts." "Do you think he suspected my identity?" "Probably. But as long as you were helping defend his empire, he didn't care who you really were." Their communication system chimed with an incoming message from the Confederation network. Temporal echo dancing appeared in holographic form, its shifting temporal existence making the image flicker between different probability states. "The probability streams have shifted," the time-touched wanderer reported. "Krillian defensive preparations are now factored into Void Reaper tactical calculations. The enemy is adapting their strategy." "Adapting how?" Liara asked. "They are accelerating their timetable and expanding their target list. The offensive will begin within 30 standard days and will encompass multiple sectors simultaneously." James felt his stomach drop. "How many sectors?" "7, including territories controlled by the Simbari Collective, the Machinate Hierarchies, and the Shadow Dominion. The Void Reapers intend to eliminate all major galactic powers in a single coordinated strike." Liara stared at the probability projections flowing across their display. "They're not just attacking individual empires. They're trying to destroy the entire galactic civilization. Which means our little confederation is about to become the galaxy's only hope for organized resistance," James realized. The weight of that responsibility settled over them as they plotted course for the Confederation's emergency gathering point. What had started as a personal choice to avoid unwanted marriage had become a desperate race to save countless billions of lives. But for the first time since leaving the marriage summit, Liara felt genuinely hopeful. They had built something unprecedented, a network of cooperation that spanned dozens of species and thousands of star systems. If anyone could find a way to stop the Void Reapers, it would be this unlikely alliance of free beings working together by choice rather than conquest. The only question was whether they had enough time to coordinate an effective response before the darkness between galaxies descended upon them all.